Well, if you have followed along this far and you haven't been bewildered or amazed yet, this one will amaze you. This video, we're talking about the quickening. The quickening is the final process that brings everybody together. A little bit of background on this. As I was learning to help my wife integrate, a certain point came along where her higher self came forward and said, there's going to come a time when everyone is completely united, and that will be called the quickening. And quickening it's kind of an old word that we really don't use much in language today. And so I said, the quickening, and she says, yes, the quickening. It will make sense to you once you understand it. Okay. And I don't know how many times I'd heard phrases like that. Essentially, this whole journey for me has been do what you're told, follow the directions, and the understanding will come later. In this case, the understanding came quite a bit later, but when it came all of a sudden. So, everything about the process that we're going to explain in this video came directly from behind the curtain, and it wasn't just with one client. It wasn't just with my wife. It came from several clients, probably about 4 or 5. And when you see a certain pattern, when you see a certain amount of consistency, well, then that's when you really want to pay attention, especially when a higher self comes forward and says, Keith, this is the way we're going to do this, and you need to pay attention because this is going to be for your benefit and your learning, and you will help others with this information. That's a pretty powerful statement. Now, you also have to take a few things into account. First of all, you have to remember who you're talking to. So you take that into account. Well, in the case of the higher self, one of the things that is characteristic of them is they do not lie, and they will not mislead you, and they have not lied. Of course, another characteristic about them, and I found it quite frustrating, is they, to a person, will say, this is what you're supposed to do, and the understanding will come later. So, I was in a state of amazement and bewilderment all during this journey. And as I came forward and started helping people based upon the knowledge that I was given, and as I came forward and told people what I could do, and when people were healing within a matter of a week instead of years, you can imagine the labels that I have endured. I have been called everything from brilliant to a quack to an idiot. Let's address both ends. The brilliant part, I don't know. And quite honestly, I don't care. Rather than a state of brilliance, I see myself as in a state of gratitude. I am very grateful for the information that I've received. I never wanted to be in this position. Heck, I wanted to be a seaboat captain, and that never happened in my life. I never would have guessed that I would be in this position. But since I am in this position, I really find a great deal of gratification in knowing that I'm able to help a lot of people. And my goal here is that you're going to be in a position to do the very same thing. In fact, I've said it before in other videos. My goal is that I will share enough information with you that you will be able to do far greater things than what I have done. And you'll be able to help far, far more people than what I have been able to do. Now, as far as the critics and the naysayers, those that labeled me as a quack and a crackpot, and the list can go on and on. my only question is, what do you have to offer? If it's working, well, until you have something better to offer, I think that you should just stand by and be amazed, because so far I've helped a lot of people, and it has worked probably about 90% of the time. There have been a couple of incidences where it did not, and when you got to the root cause, it was simply a matter of choice. There is such a thing as a sacred wound. When you identify with an abusive past or being a victim or something like that, sometimes people get a lot of attention with that, and that prevents people from moving forward. I had one client who saw that this was actually working, and she said, before we started on day 4, she said, "So when I'm completely integrated, does this mean I will no longer qualify for public assistance?" And I said, "Well, I really don't know. I don't know anything about that." And she says, "You know what? I can't risk that. So we're just going to stop right here." I had to honor that choice. That was her choice. Wasn't a choice I would have made, but it was her choice. So except for rare, extreme situations like that, I am happy to report that over 90% of the time, this works. And the times that it doesn't, it's because of choice. And so what do you do with that? Well, you just roll with it. You have to honor that. There's nothing else that you can do. This video is about the quickening. What does that word mean? If you look it up, quicken means to be made live again. So a quickening is a process where you are made live again. And quite honestly, that is about as close to a literal description as to what happens at the end of this process as I can come up with. It's to be made live again. And if you think about everything that I've taught so far, how when the spirit comes to this earth, sometimes pre-birth, but usually at birth, and it is made alive, and the abuse separates it to the point where it divides and creates alter personalities, and then we bring them to this point where we are able to combine them all again. The quickening is a very appropriate name for this process. Now, a few things that you're going to experience, and a few things that you're going to experience with your client, is the overwhelming sense of joy and gratification that comes during this process and at the end of this process. So let's set the stage a little bit for this demonstration, and in fact, here's what I'm going to do. I have a guest, and she is going to help me model this, and we're going to do it twice. Once we're going to show it just like it would be in a therapeutic session, and then we're going to back up and we're going to break it apart into different stages and do it again. And as we do it again, we will pause along the way, and I will explain everything that I know as far as energetic working principles that are associated with this process, so that you will get a pretty good idea as to what it looks like, and then you will have the understanding. Lucky you. I had to just do it, and then the understanding would come later. Here, we're just going to do it for you, and then the understanding is going to come right away. So to set the stage for this process, if you go with a couple of videos ago where we talked about the light dance, and especially with the escalator involved, what you probably have going on just before this, at this stage in the healing, is you have several personalities that are in the light. Most of them have a new name and a purpose. Some of them don't, and that's okay. What you're going to do is you're going to invite them to integrate into basically two types. One is going to be for the adult mind. The other is going to be for what we call the heart child. Now, the only two that I really get questions about is, well, what about the body regulator? Body regulator, don't worry about it. He's an energy, he's an intelligence, and he will become part of the body. Well, what about the higher self? Higher self actually gravitates towards the heart child. And there's a unique characteristic about the higher self. It can, at times, when it's appropriate, separate itself even after the final integration to receive inspiration and revelation pertinent for that person's life. So the higher self will probably be the one who is guiding you along and letting you know what's going on within the system. And the way you invite them is they can either do a light dance or they can do what's called a heart hug. And what a heart hug is, the best way to explain that is you take your left arm over the shoulder, the right arm under the shoulder, and you just pull yourself into each other. And as they do that, they should be able to do that with no problems at all, because at this stage they have already released all the negative energy that they held. Now, general rule, and in the final outcome, it doesn't matter, but a general rule is those who are doers end up with the mind adult, or the adult mind. Those that were holders, they generally end up as heart children. So you're going to have this integrating going on until you only have two, plus the higher self. And when you're down to that, well, then that's when we follow through with the final process, which we call the quickening. And we will demonstrate that to you here in just a moment. Okay, that's scene 1. Scene 3. Take a shot. You know what? That's a good idea.
Yeah, do some over.
Okay. A couple of things to keep in mind. With this. If you can imagine a person whose system has, there's a large percentage of the personalities who have never been or never spent a lot of time in the body. When the quickening happens, they have a sense of bewilderment, well, not bewilderment, wonderment about the world. They are seeing things for the first time ever. And so little things that we take for granted, they are seeing. And so sometimes the stimulation can be a little much. It's probably a good idea that they have a driver, someone who can take them home. I would suggest that when they do the quickening, that they reserve a day or two to rest up, because it's going to be a whole new way of living. And life skill classes at that point, that's probably a really good idea. So if they are seeing a therapist, and the therapist has passed that off to you, which happened to me more than half of the times that I've done this, that therapist is still very valuable, because they're going to need somebody that they can take life skill classes from. And in fact, on our website, we are going to include those just as soon as we have it put together. But life skill classes are going to be necessary because they are living a whole new life. Now, an analogy that I give is this whole life experience is kind of like having a bicycle. When you're born, you're given a bicycle. And when the abuse happens, you're never really allowed to ride that bike. You're never really allowed to learn how to ride the bike. And as you go through life, which is with the bicycle, sometimes you can put things on the bike and push it. Sometimes you can even hop on one pedal and learn to coast a little bit. And every once in a while, you might even be able to step on it and get going. But you're never quite allowed to ride the bike. After the quickening process, all of a sudden the training wheels are off, the burdens are off, and you are now able to learn how to ride that bike. So at first, it's going to be a little awkward. You may even crash, and you may skin your knee a little bit. Don't worry, you can always dust yourself off and get back on that bike and learn to ride it. And once you get the hang of that bike, life is going to be so much easier. You're going to be able to go so much further. You're going to be able to see so many things. And so I guess with my clients and we kind of have a code. Every once in a while, I'll get a phone call and they say, "Hey, Keith, what about this? What about that?" And about different things that are going on in their life. And invariably in the conversation, it comes back to, well, looks like you're learning how to ride that bike pretty good. They get it. They understand that. So that's a good analogy to use. With all of my clients, even though they can call me at any time, they don't have to. Meaning, once they get the hang of riding that bike, once they learn a few principles of life and life skills, and once they're able to recall those skills, because they don't lose anything, they don't lose any characteristics or skills that they've developed along the way. Once they're able to recall that and get accustomed to each other, or get accustomed to a new way of living, they don't have to call me. Because they can usually, if they're having a down day, they can simply talk to a friend or a spouse or some other loved one. And really, that's usually all that they need. So, their quality of life goes up. Their wonderment at life is increased. In many cases, their health has been increased. All of those prescriptions, I had one case out in South Carolina that when I first met her, she had a shoebox full of medications that she took and receipts of prescriptions that she had purchased for the year. And when we were done, with the advice of her physician, she went off of the medication completely. And she simply didn't need it. Now, was she scot-free? No. She had a few rough patches there where depression sank in and this and that. And she gave me a call and I said, "Are you getting enough rest?" And she thought about it and she said, "Actually, no." I said, "Why don't you try doing that?" So, your client is going to want to set some alone time, set some me time. A little bit of vacation might help. Set some rest time. Some of the feedback that I get is when they turn around and they look inside, they can't believe how quiet it is. And that's simply because they don't have personalities holding conversations anymore. The other thing, it's amazing how much room there is because now all of these altars are together. So, and we have covered the vacuum principle, and so that's it. Now they're done. So, I hope that this has helped. In conclusion, this all reminds me of the starfish story. It goes a little bit like this. A young boy was walking along the beach after a storm, and he came up to a starfish that had been washed up on the beach, and he picked it up and he looked at it, and he tossed it back into the water because that's where starfish live. And as he was walking along, he found another one and he tossed it in, and he met a man coming the other direction. And the man said, "Boy, what are you doing?" And the boy said, "Well, I'm saving the starfish." And the man just kind of berated him and said, "What makes you think that you're going to be able to save all these starfish? Look at them. They're all over the place. What makes you think that you're going to have an impact? What difference does it make?" To which the boy picked up another starfish and he said, "Well, I don't know about saving all of them, but it makes a difference to this one." And he threw it back in the ocean. I'm not saying that you're going to go out and save the world. But what I am saying is if you can help one person, it will mean the world to them. So, thank you again. I hope that you share this website and share these videos with other people. Trust me, there is so much work out there. There is no such thing as competition. This is needed to help heal our world. Thank you very much.